Hello ladies, welcome to Homemakers Radio. I hope you get a few things done while you listen. If you're not feeling well or you're just relaxing, there isn't much to see here. It's designed as a type of radio like we used to listen to in the 1950s while we washed dishes. And so I thought it might be fun to have something to listen to. I have my favorite things to listen to. I'm just going to write down one of them here so that I can remember to tell you about it later on. And so today, before you go and get ready, I want to share my teacup with you. It's got a lot of the color of the sweater that I'm wearing, and it's got no particular markings on it. It says it's made in England, and that's all it says. So it must have been kind of a gift cup from the 70s, 60s or 70s. Generally, the antique cups have smaller handles, and that's why I'm going more to the Gracie Bone China or the Stitch Call or the brewed to a tea type of cups from the web. So I hope you enjoyed looking at that, and now that I have shown you this cup, I think it would be nice if you would go and get ready. Now for the day, and in captivity, I think a lot of people just kind of check out mentally and physically and think, well, we're just going to wait this out. But if you look through, I was looking through the Bible at all the people who were in captivity, thinking, you know, they still had to do even the Israelites in Egypt had to do their house, the women had to do their housework, they had to bake bread, they had to make things for their family, they still had to look after their homes. And so there's no point in waiting it out. The Israelites would have had to wait 400 years. They would have been long gone. So there's no point in waiting out while you're a captive. But I thought it would be interesting to see what you could do. So I challenged myself way back in July to see what I could accomplish during captivity. And I hoped that all of you would come out the other side smarter, stronger, more creative, better, and happier, and blessed in so many ways. So I think that you could make a list and you could get started with that plan. And one of my plans was to clean my house from one end to the other and also paint it on the inside. I live in the manse, as you know, and behind me is the little dollhouse that I got years ago at Goodwill, and I have never really fixed it up. I have great plans for its improvement. And I have a little sign there that says the manse. And so I have tried to start that goal, and of course there's the daily work. So I really have not done it all, and it's been winter here, so I haven't been able to do a lot of the improvements that I wanted, but that is going to be something that I want to be maybe even smarter on the other side of captivity. And you can too. Maybe you can even prosper. Who knows what can be done? A lot of people are figuring out different ways to do things, and when we look back at the captives in the Bible, such as Joseph, my goodness, he didn't let his brain lie fallow, did he? He just used his smarts, and a lot of us kind of go into a fog sometimes when we're shut down. And if you're used to getting up and going to school or going to work, it's sometimes a big adjustment to stay home because you have to be self-motivated. It's like being self-employed. And now you know what the self-employed people have done for so many years, and the homemakers who many of us all of our lives have been homemakers. We know how to operate the home. We don't just sit around, and we have goals and plans, and we also keep records. We had albums where we kept records of our children's growth and all their special days, and pictures of them on trips that we took. So we have a record of what we did. And I encouraged all of you to get yourself some kind of a book. It could be fancy. It doesn't have to be. I've just got one of these. And have a list every day and record some of the things that you were able to do. And have a story to tell at the end of it. You know, I made friends with a very charming lady called Miss Lily of the Valley, who's also an author, and got acquainted with her stories called Pioneer Ribbons about Allison on the Oregon Trail. And since I live in Oregon, I looked up a lot of things, and I've attended some lectures about the Oregon Trail and about the pioneers, and I've studied a little bit about it and kind of know what happened. And Allison is a pioneer girl who went with her family at the age of 13 and started in Missouri, where a lot of the wagon trains began, and the wagon train masters um, would organize a train, and you'd pay a fare and you'd go along, and you had to supply your wagon with a certain amount of things, and I think it was quite expensive actually in those days. And so on her trip, the various things that she observes as a young girl. And so I look forward, if there's a day that's a little bit off or gloomy, I bury myself in the adventures of this young girl named Allison and all the things that she has done. And the recent episode that came to me, of course I can't find the little booklet that she sent me. You know, she's the lady that was on the Pioneer Times bestseller list, and she sent me the recent episode was about Allison and her parents trying to cross a shallow part of a river before they actually got into Oregon territory. And they started in, most of the pioneers started in May and hoped to be here by September before it froze or got cold or any kind of other disaster. And I read a book called Christians on the Oregon Trail, and it described these Christians who came on various wagon trains and how nothing happened to them, even though they stopped every Lord's Day and worshiped and took the Lord's Supper and prayed and had a sermon. And sometimes the wagon masters were actually the preachers. And how God brought them safely over here. These are stories never heard, of course, never exploited by the media because they're too tame. But they didn't have the tragedies that the other types of people had. And I read to you some time ago in one of these videos how the wagon master was a religious man on one train, and these people had written this down in a diary or a letter that was found and published in this book, Christians on the Oregon Trail. And there were some people that were very disdainful of Christianity, and they woke the wagon master up on Sunday morning and said, "We're ready to go. When are you going to get us going? You know, we've got to go." And he said, "Well, I take a few hours of Sunday off because the animals need to rest and we need to worship." And he told them what time worship would be, and they said, "Oh, don't give us that." So that was back in the 1800s. So there were still those cynics, and there were still those people who despised what was good. And so it's kind of encouraging to read it because there's nothing new under the sun, and every generation has to learn character. And so this is one thing that we're enduring now, and I don't think we should endure captivity. I think we should thrive. I think you should come out stronger and even physically more healthy. You can now start eating foods that are real and healthy because you're not on the go all the time, and you've got time to look them over and buy them and prepare them. Those of you who have gardens have got time now for your gardens. And so I started on exercising, and I started with the chair exercises, and I used Fabulous 50s. Now, I don't listen all the time to the background music or the things that the instructor is saying, because you never can find somebody that agrees with everything you believe, and they're trying to motivate you, and so some of the philosophy that comes out of it is not too great. But I watched the exercises and listened to the instructions, and I did the chair exercises for a while, and that's where you're sitting in a chair. And I didn't have much faith in exercise for a long time, because in the old days the way they taught it was not really beneficial to me, whereas the new instructors are aware of physical therapy and how the body works and how the core of the body carries your limbs, and how you have to keep the core of your body strong and healthy. And so those exercises are very beneficial, and they don't make you feel tired or sore afterwards, and there's not a lot of jumping around. But then I graduated too. I thought I would be willing to go on to something a little bit different that would make me stronger, and I've got the balance exercises. And so these balance exercises are simply standing up and holding one foot an inch or so off of the floor just for a minute or two and putting it back down, or crossing your foot over. And you would think, oh, that's a silly exercise, but they really do take a lot of strength from the core of your body. And so then I want to come out at the end of captivity stronger. And I think everybody could, especially the men, could do some bodybuilding. You never know when you might be called on to lift something heavy or defend your family. And so, and women ought to be strong too. So you can take your exercises. And then I decided to take a little time to develop a talent. So I picked an art class by Zoom that I do about once a month. You can choose which, if you don't like the painting they're going to do, which they'll tell you ahead of time, you can choose the next one. So I know there are some ladies that think $20 is too much for a class, but if you're only doing a class, if you're only choosing one every couple of months, that isn't really that much. So I decided to do that. Now I have a little gallery on one of my walls of some of the paintings that I have done. I am not professional yet, and I might go on to do other things, but we can become stronger, and we can become more talented, and we can develop skills. And one of the skills that I am trying to develop is learning to paint things in the house, different kinds of tools that you use for professional painting, and also repairs, learning more repairs, like this dresser on which the dollhouse is seated has some missing knobs. I'm going to figure out how to fix those and get the ones that match, and just developing all the time, plus knowledge. And I am a veteran homeschooler, and so I learned the value of teaching not just knowledge, but from the scripture, add to your virtue knowledge, and to your knowledge self-control, and to self-control, and to on and on and on. And I noticed that knowledge was only one thing in that list, and virtue was strength and goodness. And so our students in schools are not taught this strength and this goodness and you know, justice, and I mean really biblical godly justice, and they're not taught character studies the way that you can at home. So really you're at an advantage, and so I'm going to be teaching you some of those things that I know and kind of have a mind for now. It seems like you just get started and get rolling on homeschooling, and then they grow up and they're gone. Like, okay, what am I going to do now? So I decided I would just tell you. Now, one of the important things about homemaking and being home, for those of you who aren't used to it, is to dress up. Now, as you can see, I'm wearing a sparkly sweater today because we aren't going anywhere, so I decided I would just dress up for the home and get a matching teacup and take myself to tea here. And I want to be sure that Mr. S does not stay in his office all the time. And this is winter, so it's very tempting to, you know, get settled in somewhere and not move around. So a couple times a week I have a tea table, and I have a special table in the living room so that we're not always eating at the same place. And so I'm going to invite him to tea several times a week, so he will get up and go into another room. And he loves to work, he loves to study, and he does the church bulletin, he does the lessons and the sermon, and we've been married almost 50 years, and I learned quite quickly that he doesn't want to be constantly upset or ask questions. I have to do a lot of things myself because he'll be busy with his work, and so I decided that I would learn a lot of how to fix things and do things that I would have to do on the days that he wouldn't be able to help me. So that is a challenge too. But I think it's really important for appearance that especially if you're getting discouraged, if you're getting depressed, go and I realize some people can get down so low they really don't want to fix their hair or do their skincare or get dressed. But if you have a friend that you can call and ask her to give you a reason for getting up and getting dressed, that's very helpful too, because often you'll find that the friend really doesn't know any more than you do, and then you start to think, I'm really smart, I think I could do it. And so if you had to list before you went to bed at night reasons for getting up and getting dressed in captivity, why would you do it, and how different would it be? Well, I think we can actually be more motivated to take care of our appearance when we're home because now we have more freedom of what we're going to wear. If you have been going to work or going to school, there's limits on what you can do, and there's kind of a maybe in some places an unspoken dress code. But at home, there's not. You can just dig into your closet, get things out, and I'm not saving anything for best anymore because we noticed even before captivity uh, that even at church, the the celebrations and the formal times were getting fewer. Besides our church dinners, there were fewer weddings, and there were fewer family reunions. It was just getting where people were not doing this as much, and so all these formal clothes are still hanging there, and so we're wearing them and enjoying them, and which makes you realize back in the 30s during the Depression when you would see these photographs of people, well-dressed people standing in line for bread or to get some kind of relief check, and they would have their best clothes on. Well, I suppose by then they had probably worn out everything else and were wearing their Sunday best. Now, one of the reasons to get dressed up, you worry about your clothes, don't you? But you can wear aprons over them, and now you can get aprons. It used to be, even back in 2005, when we kind of first started being more active on the internet, you couldn't find an apron anywhere. But then they started making, people at home started making the pinafore type aprons, which covered the the front of you better. That's where all the flour and the food and the grime goes. And now you can get aprons. You can go order them. They were very hard to find years ago, though. So it's very wise to have an apron wardrobe because you can wear them over these good clothes if this is what you choose to wear. And so I wanted to make sure that you have got up and got dressed and fixed yourself up today. And since some people complain that, well, no one's going to be here, we're not going to see anyone, we have kept church open all this time. So this is Sunday, and we are going to be attending services soon. And but on the days when no one will come, I think it's really important to keep your skills up as far as getting your hair done and your skincare, because if you've ever just let it go and then you pick up your brush or you pick up your lotions and things and you think, oh, wait a minute, how did I do this? You know, and you don't have the skill anymore. And it's like being an artist. You know, if you lay your brushes down for a while, uh, it sometimes makes you feel a little bit rusty when you start up again. And so I think it's really important for your mood and to dress for your mood. What color does it feel like today? And I know somebody will be depressed and say, oh, it's just gray, but you know, gray is quite a nice color, and there are different kinds of grays, and some of them have more blue in them, some of them have pink in them, some of them have brown in them. You have to notice that gray is not completely a bad color. And so I know as people used to say, you know, they called it Blue Monday, and remember Fats Domino had that song Blue Monday, but a lot of people love blue. So I don't know why they called it Blue Monday or you've got the blues when a lot of people love blue. But today I want to talk a little bit more about being careful with your homemaking, because it's easy to let it slide if you know you're going to be home day after day after day. It's easy to let all those corners slide, and I've noticed that about myself too, because we used to be a lot busier socially, and also you know, having to go out and get supplies and just doing the errands in town. And then I noticed when became captives that I had let a lot of things slide, and it was easier to push something aside and quickly clean up something on the surface so I could get on to whatever important thing that I had to do. And so now I'm discovering that, and the chickens have come home to roost, as they say. And I'm getting further and further into rooms that I have let go that I thought didn't matter. But you know, it makes it easier to go into a section of the house that used to be a dark corner that I was just didn't bother with, to look at it and see that it's bright now and that it's cleaned up. And I know I've had dreams about being in a house where half of it is real dark, and I didn't go in there. And then I realized, boy, I've got some corners I need to clean up. So now that we're all captives, we can do something. And remember, the captives in the Bible were not idle. And even the Apostle Paul, who was taken into custody several times, had a mission. He wanted to teach the people around him. He wanted to teach the governors, and he used the opportunity. So that's what I say, if we get our Marxist governor decides they want to come to my house, she's going to get taught a few lessons. And before they take me in and put me in shackles, I'm going to be talking. So we can use the example of captives of the Bible, of how much that they did, and how you don't just sit there and let your mind vegetate. You get busy and you become better. And you also can help the people in your family. I'm a veteran homeschooler, so I'm going to be homeschooling you a little bit too. You can help everyone develop a skill that can be marketable. You can help them use their own capital, which capital is your hands, and it's your mind, and it's your energy. That's the kind of capital I'm talking about. And that's the kind that God gave you. And also how you can develop a business of your own, or be in some way useful to an enterprise of some kind. And you can study more about this in several of the homeschool books have studies about business, how business operates. I'm going to read you a poem right now, though. And this poem is, I wanted to preface it by saying that it's very important in captivity not to develop a small-mindedness. This is very important. You've got to keep your conversation very full and very energetic and full of things that have a meaning and will give energy to others and to yourself. So I wanted to, when you're a little child, I know you probably realized that you have long, boring moments, and you're waiting for something to happen, or you're waiting because you're a child and you're kind of helpless. You can't just go do something you want to. And so, in a way, that's the way it is. But in order to keep from letting those moments slide by, time is so valuable. If the first thing you learn about creating an enterprise of your own, or when you're teaching children to create enterprise, is that time is your money, time is your value. And so I want to read a little poem about this that I taught my children, especially the girls, because girls need to know the importance of these little minutes and how a minute adds up to an eternity, and you cannot waste them. We understand that we will have to have time to rest. That doesn't mean that it's wasted. So let me read this, and it's called The Little Things by Julia A. Fletcher. I don't know if any of you know about this poet. I don't know much about her, and this is the only poem I think I know. Little drops of water, little grains of sand, make the mighty ocean of the pleasant land. So the little minutes, humble though they be, make the mighty ages of eternity. And so I think it's very important to have that attitude towards time, that these little minutes are just as important as eternity because they build eternity. Also wanted to warn you about being small-minded. Now, I don't care for the quote, the one by Eleanor Roosevelt that everybody was throwing around in all the sales programs, small minds talk about people, average minds talk about things, and great minds talk about ideas. I don't agree with it, because if you read the New Testament, you'll see Paul, the Apostle Paul and Christ, talking about people all the time, but it was in a motivational, strong spiritual sense of, and also when they gave greetings in the New Testament epistles, it was greetings to this person or that person, and how they had helped them. And so I don't agree with that statement at all. But it's so ingrained in our culture that everyone thinks that's what we should be talking about. But I wanted to tell you that it's important not to get small-minded in the way that if you do have people around, that you can talk to them and about interesting things. And for example, words that you have studied or things that you have remembered that are really important. And I had one of my children was over on Christmas Day, and I was telling them the history of uh, one side of our family, and how as far back as we could remember it had started in Northern Ireland in Ulster, and how these people had come to Pennsylvania and moved across and ended up in various other places in Canada and the United States. And so that's an interesting thing to talk about if you can learn to talk about it fluently without having to go through all the letters and papers that you have. And to avoid getting small-minded, that means not to avoid getting small-minded means to have a better knowledge of life than the little tiny things that that can make people think that you're not all there. So avoid small-mindedness, and I think that's really important. I'm going to read another poem for you here, and I also wanted to tell you that one of the things we have to avoid is we have to know, because I was homeschooling, I was made very much aware. This was a book that we used called God and American Government and Economics in Christian Perspective, and there was also a book we had called God and Government, which was excellent, and it warned people about the difference between the biblical uh, expectation of what government is for, how government serves you, and how we, the people, are the government, and we hire our politicians to serve us and to help us, not vice versa. We're not their subjects, they're our subjects, and that's the way it works in America. And that's why it's so hard sometimes for people overseas to understand us, is that they are subjects uh, of a king or queen or prime minister or leader or something, but our president and our representatives are our subjects, and so we can hire them and fire them, but but it has been infiltrated, and always has been, our government, by communism. And so I was watching a video, which I will put the link to, and I think it's very important if you're a homeschool mama or if you are being homeschooled by me. It's very important for you to know this. And it was a video interview with Joshua Phillip of Crossroads, and he had someone there who was talking about the personality of Karl Marx. And I had, before the internet, in the olden days, when we had books, known a few things about this man Karl Marx. And the main thing that I had remembered was that he argued about everything. And he was somewhat like Cynic. Now, Cynic was someone who lived before Christ, who also argued against sound reason, and it would be anything to do with the way life was. For instance, if you were used to family life and you all sat around to dinner, he would rail against that and say, no, we'll walk around and we'll eat while we're walking around, or we'll and if everyone wore clothes a certain way, well, he would wear them backwards. And the idea was to break down anything that had any kind of construction to it, anything that had any kind of sense to it. And that's the way Karl Marx was to break up the family, to break up the churches, to break up enterprise, and to break up business, because it was cohesive. Anything that was cohesive was to break it up. And so I will put the link there for you so you can listen to that while you work. It's not going to rattle you or disturb you, because you've got to have this knowledge, because you can't fight against it or teach against it. Now, we can't do anything about a lot of things, but we can speak. We can say something. We can say something to a teenage child that comes in the room and says, Mom, I don't think this is so bad or that's so bad. We can say, okay, well, here's the roots of this and this and this. And so you need to have knowledge. It keeps you from being small-minded too. So I will include that, but I want to read a couple of poems to you today from the collected verse of Edgar A. Guest, who was America's family poet. But this is not all that he wrote. There are several other volumes of it, and don't quite know where to start. So I'm going to start towards the back here where I've got all my little markers here and read to you while you work. I've been speaking for almost 30 minutes. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to go an hour today. But also I wanted to give you pictures of the whole room. I know I've been giving you kind of like little hints of a room tour in my photographs on my posts. And by the way, if you are watching this on YouTube, I would suggest you click the link and go to my blog to watch it, because then you can see the rest of the post. I'm making these videos for my blog, and so I don't really interact with anybody here on YouTube, and I might be moving it to a different platform eventually. So you want to subscribe on my blog on the left, where it's you can get it by email, a notification, and then you will always see the video, and then you will see the other things that I am writing on that post. And because I might go somewhere else and you might not see it on YouTube, so be sure and do that. And you also, if you don't want to leave a comment but you'd like to have a comment posted, you can email me. Okay, so this is called weariness, and I think it's very applicable to us because some of us feel a bit captive. God set him in a garden fair where tulips bloomed each spring. About him, always everywhere, was many a lovely thing. With miracle and mystery his every day was filled, and yet he only seemed to see the structures mortals build. He knew the stars were overhead, but seldom raised his eyes. The paths of life he chose to tread, a stranger to the skies. From youth to manhood, then to age, he plunged his spirit deep in figures on the ledger page. Correct accountants keep. He never learned the names of flowers, or birds, or friendly trees. In all his busy wakeful hours, he never heard the breeze enticing him with bits of song to let a day go by, to watch a brooklet race along, or gaze upon the sky. God set him in a garden fair with countless splendors strewn, but all he saw while walking there was stone some man had hewn, and all he talked was loss and gain and cold commercial strife, which makes it easy to explain how tired he grew of life. And I mentioned several things here about the structures mortals build. You know, sometimes I'd feel a little bit intimidated because we'd be reading the Old World History and Geography, which is an excellent book, by the way, by A. Becca. And I would see, they'd have photographs of these wonderful architectural structures in Europe, and I would feel very inferior because in America, the oldest building is, well, the oldest city is Alexandria, and I believe it's in Florida, and there you can find quite an old structure, an old city. But the oldest places out here are 200 years old, and many of us still have letters from our grandmothers and great-grandmothers dating back to the day of the oldest structure. But I'd feel a bit intimidated because there's not much. They called it culture, but I think it's important to take your children outside and show them the names of the flowers, the names of the trees. We have a tree outside called a blue spruce, and it looks blue. And we have a tree outside called the cedar of Lebanon. It has great big cones on it, absolutely gorgeous. And we have lilac trees, and we have maple trees, and we have different kinds of grasses. And I think that's really, really important because it talks about, you know, being so absorbed in man-made things, how important it is for children to grow up knowing about the God-made things, and that not everything is man-made. Okay, so here's a poem he wrote called Gift of Life. Not much from this great world I ask, beyond the strength to do my task. It is enough that I may on hand to see a blossoming tree, and hear a songbird now and then, singing his hymns of joy to men. Books on a shelf, a ruddy fire, a restful nook whene'er I tire, laughter of children at their play, outside a little garden gay, where all the blazing summer through comes into bloom some splendor new. I do not ask that life shall be forever care and sorrow free, nor that some distant morning I shall not awake to grieve and sigh, but I ask faith to stand before whatever the future has in store. Let me be one whose courage springs from all the countless little things of joy and beauty which abound wherever man may look around. Let me exult in peace or strife that I have had the gift of life. And I think that this is really important because he said, I ask but faith to stand before whatever the future has in store. And I reminded you of a song that we sing in church about Father, hear the prayer we offer, not for ease that prayer shall be, but for strength that we may ever live our lives courageously. What a song, what a beautiful song. And to teach that is so good. Now here's a good one for ladies that are sick and tired of the news, sick and tired of politics, okay? I move that we adjourn. He wrote this poem. Now this man wrote back in the 1940s, I believe, 1930s and 40s. When I'm weary of argument wordy and tired of continuous debate, when the speaker, like some hurdy-gurdy, which carries on early or late, keeps up a monotonous bellow on lessons I don't want to learn, 'tis then I give cheers for the fellow who rises and moves to adjourn. There are motions to lay on the table, there are motions for this and for that, and I stick just as long as I'm able and hark to the chatterer's chat. I stand for the rising thanks motion for the one who has done a good turn, but my friend is the chap with the notion to get up and move to adjourn. There are some who like papers and speeches and open discussions of things, and heights some new orator reaches, the lesson and message he brings, but each his own fancy must cling to. What one chooses others may spurn. So this simple tribute I sing to the brother who moves to adjourn. Remember, what one chooses others may spurn. Remember, Lizzie's sister, Jane, said, yes, but Lizzie, not everyone is the same. And he talks about, he cheers the fellow who rises and moves to adjourn. Well, do you remember, some of you in the olden days, when people would get on a subject that wasn't very nice, or maybe started to criticize you, the mother or the person in the house would say, well, let's change the subject. And you did. You changed the subject. And they taught their children, you get on a subject that's not good, you say, we need to change this subject. This is not good. But now, of course, we've been in an era where that was not considered correct, and so they just let people go on and on and on and explore subjects to death and to the hurt and ruin of other people in the house. And now to get a family that gets along, I grew up in a large family, so that had to be one of the rules, was we have to change the subject. Can't talk about this anymore. Unless, of course, it is something that's very legitimate, that is, someone's sorrow or something like that. Someone is sorrowful and needs to talk. That's not the same thing. If it's a subject that's not pleasant and not good and not edifying, that you have the right and the duty to change the subject. Okay, so this poem here is called What's in It for Me? We fancied he'd share in our cause. Instead, there is nothing in it for me, he said. He passed up pity and play and mirth and counted his time to the penny's worth. Ask for his help, and this would be his answer. What is there in it for me? Nothing, it meant, if you said, in this perhaps is friendship you'll someday miss. Here is a task that won't pay in gold, but will leave you prouder when you grow old. Though nothing for this will your purse collect, it will pay you richly in self-respect. What is there in it for me, he said. We mentioned pride, but he shook his head. The joy of giving, he flicked his hand, that he never could understand. And he found when life's last far bend was turned that money was all he had ever earned. This is one of the problems we face as homemakers, and we're home now and maybe more than we want to be. We think, well, what's in it for me? What have I done all year? I've done dishes, I've done meals, and I've shown hospitality, and I've done so many things, and what's in it for me? well, you do grow in a feeling of accomplishment and self-respect, and you can stand up straighter, and you do have a sense of worth. And worth is very important for women at home, to have a feeling of worth and to know your worth. It's nice if you have someone in the family that's telling you your worth, but that won't always be so with many people. A lot of people don't think to tell the homemaker of her worth, because they were praised to the skies back in the Victorian time. The homemaker were praised to the skies, that a man that got a good wife was considered richer in many ways, because she would help him on his life's journey, and she would help increase their value together, and in many ways. But I don't think that the work that she does at home now is as respected, and so she has to realize that she has worth. And so everything that she does now, for instance, when I talked about cleaning up a corner of the laundry room or something that is just not pleasant, that feeling of accomplishment is also is very head clearing, very mind clearing, and in a way spiritual, and makes life worthwhile for you and for others, and even if no one else cares. Okay, so ladies, that is all of the poetry that I'm going to read you today, and I would like to encourage you, if you're home alone especially, to get dressed, to get your house cleaned up, and to read something that is worthwhile. Now, I will leave that link for you to listen to, and also I don't like to watch too much. I like to listen as I go, because I've got so much to do here, and I am going to show you some of the whole rooms here. Get my camera located so I can get the room in one picture, so that you can see the whole room. I've been showing you little bits and tidbits of the rooms, but to get ready and to have your appearance ready, to get your house cleaned up, and to read something that has some value to it. And I did watch today I like to listen mostly, but I did watch today a video of someone cleaning her house, and it did inspire me. I don't like to sit too long, so I didn't finish it, but it got me going. So maybe this will help you get going, and I hope that I wanted to. I didn't bring the scripture to actually read, but it was in Matthew, so I'll just paraphrase it for you here, of Christ talking in one of his sermons. I believe this was from the Sermon on the Mount, and I think that his disciples had probably often asked him, "Are you going to free us from oppression?" And as you know, they were at the time, a Roman soldier could ask a Jew or a Christian to carry a load, and there was a law that they could not go more than a mile, and then they had to get someone else. But can you imagine? And this is just like the homemaker or the captivity. You're busy doing your work and you're making progress in life, and then you get shut down. You get waylaid. You get taken somewhere else, and like being taken captive. And so these people could be going about taking their wares home to, they've been out at the market, and they've had this food, and they had to go home, and a Roman soldier could say, "Well, you have to carry my stuff for a mile," and they got waylaid, and they had to go do that. And so they were asking Christ, "Are you going to free us from this?" And it's interesting, his answer. He said, "If a man asks you to go 1 mile," remember that was the legal limit, "go with him 2." And I can see in a way the value of that. First of all, it shows love for someone, and then you would have an opportunity to teach them, even silently, about the Christian life, about the love, and about the sacrifice, and about the going the extra mile. We have that in our vocabulary today, to go the extra mile. Don't do just, and I taught my children, I was taught when I was growing up, don't do just what you're told and you have to do. Do it a little extra better. Do it, put a little extra oomph into it. And that's like it's called going the second mile. If you want to look up all that today, that might be some challenge I could give you, to look up what the second mile really means. And so when you do that, then you're happier. And when raising children, one of the things I learned that they didn't like, that they didn't respond well to, was not being able to complete a job, not being able to do a job well, where you rush them through something. They have to think about it. They have to, when you watch them play, you notice they're thinking about every little thing, and their mind has to be settled. So it's the same with us too. We don't like to be rushed through something, and we like to do a good job. We like to stand back, just like at the creation. And our Creator has made us creative too. Just like at the creation, after each day, God would, in a sense, stand back and look at it and say, it is good. Can you do that? Wouldn't you like to clean up a room and stand back and look at it and say, this looks pretty good? And so I challenge you to do that today, to be able to do something and say, this looks good. So ladies, I know this isn't quite an hour, but you can always click on continuous play, or whatever it's called on the left there, and it's my videos that you can so you can listen to others from previous times. And I hope you have a lovely day. I hope you've gotten dressed, and I hope you've got your list ready. Don't forget about your list. The list is really important because it gives you, it doesn't have an emotion in it. It just gives you something to do. And if someone gives you, one of the problems with women at home is that women are emotional, and we're very, very attached emotionally to our people, and which is how God intended it. And they can give you bad news, and they can give you a start, and you can start hearing from your descendants and some of the things they do, and it can really give you a start, and it can destabilize you for a little bit. And so what you have is this list, and you'll say, well, I'm just going to go do this. I'll just do this while I pray about it, or while I think about it. And so it keeps you grounded. It keeps you focused, these lists. Also, don't forget to try to get interested a little bit in exercise, because that is also a mental thing. And one of the things I noticed about the captives in the Bible was that they all felt they still had a purpose. And that's so interesting, because when you have gone to work every day, your purpose is to please the employer. You come home, and now you have to create a new purpose. But these people that were captive, and you can go from Esther to to the Apostle Paul, and on through, and to the Apostle John, and you'll find that they still had a message. They still had something to give. So whether you are painting a picture, or writing a story, or just beautifying the place in which you live, please do that, because it has and make it your offering and your worship, part of your worship, your daily worship to God. So ladies, don't forget to pray. Don't forget to do your list. Don't forget to get your cup of tea. And don't forget to get dressed and get beautified. So I'll talk to you later. Bye.